Okay, let's talk about Prolon. Do you know what Prolon is? So Prolon is the food that was created by Walter Longo and his team for the fast mimicking diet. And in this interview, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Joseph Antoun, the CEO of El Nutra, who is leading the way with the fast mimicking diet. They're also leading the way in some other really cool strategies around keeping food healthy. And so in this interview, we dissect the fast mimicking diet. We dissect Prolon. We talk about fasting and lowering calories and how long you should be fasting. Really interesting interview. And again, as always, I hope you enjoy it. And if you give Prolon a try, let me know. There's some cool qualities to the fast mimicking diet. Okay, resetters, I am really excited to have my next guest, Dr. Joseph Antoun, to really dive into the fast mimicking diet and Prolon. And we were just, before we got on here, we were really talking about intermittent fasting as well. So let me just start off by welcoming you. You are a busy man and so grateful that you're taking the time to talk with us. So welcome.
Yeah, pleasure is mine, and more than happy to have this discussion and help people understand the different types of fasting and why fast with food, why fast without food, and when and how, and the risk of everyone. That's the number one topic, I think, in nutrition today. So more than
Yeah,
happy to
I
talk
love
about
it.
all of it.
I love
Yeah,
it. So give us a little background. So many people know Dr. Walter Longo, and
yes.
if you're not familiar, Dr. Anton is the CEO of Prolon. So talk a little bit about your background, how you got into this, and what part do you play in the Prolon experience?
Yeah, so I went to med school, probably like most doctors wanting to save as many patients and make a change in their life. And then when I started doing my rotations at the hospital, I figured out that my call was more for changing the health system and changing the way we do moving sick care to healthcare, basically.
Yeah.
And I do remember in some of my rotations, we were, basically I felt that instead of helping people reverse or prevent what they're going through, being pre-diabetic or being, high risk cardiovascular, etc., we're waiting for them until they qualify to get a pill. And I didn't want to be part of that system, although it's very necessary. It's really, if we're sick, we really need medicine, we really need that support. But there's a lot more for us to do beforehand. So I decided to venture in health policy and public health. I did my health policy studies at Harvard and I did my public health at Hopkins and decided to start a career in system reform and bringing new technologies that help us prevent disease or actually try to cure diseases, but not having people stay on a pill every day. That was my kind of,
I
sweet
love
spot
it.
is how can we do either solve that disease or prevent it. And I started consulting with many ministries of health around the world, and then I ended up joining one of the biotech companies, Lilly, to try to learn also how we discover technologies, how we bring them to the market, etc. And one of my passion was always to replicate my mindset every year with 60 students. I always had
Oh, that's
an academic hat. I used to teach at University of Chicago and became head of health policy there. Was also the editor in chief of the Journal of Health Systems and Reform, basically trying to put governments together, catalyze a discussion on how to change the healthcare system to do more of healthcare. And and I was really bumping, if you want, into a wall every time I talked with the ministry, saying that they would say, okay, we are for prevention. It's a collection of education around alcoholism and tobacco and eat healthy and exercise, but that was it. They felt that there was nothing for them to invest in. There was no market for prevention. And I started looking around how can we redefine healthcare, and I stumbled on the concept of aging, and
mm,
that aging is kind of the trunk of that tree, and the diseases, the chronic diseases,
oh,
are
interesting.
branches. Meaning, today we try to treat Alzheimer's and as if it's different than cardiovascular disease, different than diabetes, different than cancer, And actually the view from an aging perspective, and these are branches of aging. And this is why you don't get Alzheimer's at age 20, you don't get your first heart attack at age 22, you don't get most cancers at age 16 or 17 or 18. So that biological aging, the way you age, predisposes your functions to different diseases. And we have to work more on prolonging the trunk of the tree so that you live
So
healthier
such a good
longer.
analogy.
And then you just branch out at the end like a palm tree, and hopefully you have a smaller part of your life where you're sick. And so I got introduced into this notion of biological aging, and I started traveling across the US internationally looking for researchers in aging and technologies. And most of them were pointing me at Walter Longo, the
Mm.
person you mentioned, who's the head of the Longevity Institute at the University of Southern California. So USC is one of the really thought kind of institution and leader in the field of aging and longevity. They set up the School of Gerontology some 40, 50 years ago, and then they founded the Longevity Institute some 12 years ago with the purpose of looking at how we age and how we can slow down our aging process or even temporarily reverse it. And this is how they came across fasting. Professor Longo, who's the founder and the director of the Longevity Institute, he came out of the school of aging and biochemistry, but more so he was working a lot as a postdoc on calorie restriction and how nutrition could impact aging. And from there, moved his discoveries to fasting. And he's considered kind of the pioneer of the field or the grandfather of the field, because he just didn't want to go direct to market or direct to writing books and blogging and talking about it before he put science on it. So behind doors and working with thought leaders and researchers at the National Institute of Aging, the National Institute of Health, he's been studying calorie restriction and fasting for a good 20 plus years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And yeah,
But
and so a lot of
his first study was the first one that became quite popular was the one done on cancer patients on 3-day fast. Is that correct?
The first, if you want, biological aging and living healthier longer, what we call health span, was one of the big focus of his. But then he discovered that if you fast a cancer before chemotherapy, you're starving the cancer, so you kind of weaken, you expose the cancer to chemo. And in mice, you get much better results with chemo efficacy when you starve the cancer right before chemo. So he was working on both tracks, and
Okay.
it's not just cancer now. There's a lot more trials on other chronic diseases. But yeah, you're 100% right. His first, if you want to go to clinical trial, was on cancer. And this is, you touched on the topic of why we got to the fasting mimicking diet. So his discovery was, if you do fasting for several hours during the day, and we're going to talk about how many hours, that's the biggest question today,
definitely.
12, 14, 16.
Everybody wants
but
to know.
but well, let's assume for now
Yeah.
few hours during the day. That helps you maintain your weight balance, and this gives you a lot of positive metabolic outcomes, and we'll talk about those. But what he discovered, the big discovery that put fasting on the map again, is that if you go for a prolonged fast, in mice he used to test 3 days. The equivalent in humans is almost 5 days with a fasting mimicking
Interesting.
diet. But if you go longer, and I always give the example of a CEO having to run a company, and if you stop the revenue for this company, if you stop it for a few days, they'll spend less, which is healthy for a company overspending, a fat company. But if you decrease the revenue of this company drastically for several months or weeks, that CEO has to reset, you have the right word, you have the resetters. So you have to go back. The CEO sits and say, you know what, to survive, we have to repair, we have to restructure, we have to decrease spending here, we have to fix that department, we have to let this person go, we have to reposition that person. So the prolonged fast puts an extra layer of stress to the body beyond weight, breaking down fat and living off it for a few hours or a day or two. He can go with that, but then the longer you go, then the body is talking to the cells saying, hey, I need now to intervene structurally on you.
Yeah.
In that reparation, that stress pushing the body to try to optimize its performance is what is the main difference between a prolonged fast versus an intermittent fast. And because fasting for 3 or 4 or 5 days is very difficult to comply with. When Walter was trying to do it with cancer patients in the clinical trials, it was so difficult for them to fast for 4 or 5 days. And so it was difficult, was the compliance issue. There's the health safety issue. Staying without food for several days is not healthy. And for some, you can do it. For some, you need the minerals, you need the vitamins.
Right.
You
Yep.
might risk hypoglycemia. You might risk low blood pressure, and then they have a higher level of gallstone bladder formation, because your bladder, if it doesn't squeeze during digestion, you have stagnation, and stagnation leads to stone formation. So for some, you
Interesting.
can do it. For some, but very few can do it, and most people cannot do it, or expose their body to some risk.
Unless
So
unless this group is, so once a month we do a 5-day fast and we experiment
yes,
with all different ones, and there are some
yes,
hardcore fasters in this
for
group
sure,
that are
for sure.
just so metabolically flexible that they can click in and
And
get
this is
into
what I
those.
was this is what I was referring to. You can have a group, a handful, dedicated, passionate people to do it, and disciplined. But if
Right.
you talk about the 7 billion
Yeah.
out there,
Yeah.
it's very difficult. It's very
Right.
difficult for them to. But you're educating your followers. They're passionately trying to do it, but still, again, let me give that example. So, say you need $1 million to run your company every month, and suddenly I give you zero. You can see how in some cases you're going to have to take some decisions that are not good for the company in the long run, but you
Yeah.
have zero. The fasting mimicking diet was actually developed out of necessity, because the patients, it wasn't safe and compliant for them to fast for 4 or 5 days, right, with chemo. And it was Volter, and under the sponsorship of the National Cancer Institute and National Institute of Aging, he started testing how much I can feed a cell with
Mm.
every ingredient, whether it's fat, whether it's carbohydrates, whether it's proteins, whether it's minerals, how much I can feed a cell without triggering the sensors of the cell to say I'm satisfied. So going back to that
Interesting.
example of a CEO, instead of giving him zero money and having him be in a crisis, because even restructuring and resetting needs financing, right? If a cell needs to replicate or fix, it still needs minerals, still need vitamins, it still needs some level of carbs and some level of protein. So instead of giving that CEO zero and create this crisis, we started testing. Can we give him $10,000? Can we give him $10,000, 10,000 euros, and 6,000 rubles, right? So how much you can feed, how much you can nourish. Now it's not
Mm-hmm.
starving, it's how much we can nourish. While that CEO is saying, thank you, this money is going to help me keep the essential operations. It's going to help me keep the supply chain. It can help me sell. It can help me keep the company alive. Thank you for that money, but I'm still cautious. You didn't give me enough. So I'm going to still reset the company. I'm going to still restructure the company. So that's the job of
It's
the
a great
fasting mimicking
analogy.
diet,
It,
is how much I can nourish you while keeping your cells under the stress and under the reset and under the rejuvenative, if you want, this is the right word, mode, but actually not putting you in a full bankruptcy right away.
Awesome.
And
So talk a little bit about that. That's really what the fast mimicking diet then was birthed out of, is that what I heard is that edge. How can we go right to that edge and allow
yes,
people to eat, but not still get the maximum benefits of fasting? So talk a little bit about like, what is the fast mimicking diet? How did Prolon, and what I usually tell people is that if you want to do it exactly how Walter Longo did it in his lab, that's what Prolon is there. It is the
yes,
exact replica of that food, which is pretty
yes.
remarkable.
I'm going to get to that. I just want to close
Yeah, go for it.
the idea of how I met Walter.
Oh
So,
yeah, okay,
so
go for it.
everyone in aging was saying, "Hey, he's the guy. He discovered that fasting is very important for biological aging and potential disease prevention. And beyond that, he discovered that it's a several days, and therefore, to make it practical and to make it a healthy experience, he developed the fasting mimicking diet, which could be the first formulation ever that is positioned for aging, for biological aging, and for preventing, age-related conditions. And then this is how I asked to meet with him. And one common CEO friend put us together. I found in him a super humanistic and top scientist that it's rare to find a person who has this global view on changing the world, yet does it, in a super scientific way. He kind of, his pledge to the world is everything I will present to you, I would test it in mice and humans. I'm not here to put just ideas. I'm here to kind of apply almost the medicine level of science to food. And he decided to donate everything he owns. Once he developed the fasting mimicking diet, you have to build a company, so the company commercializes that. So he pledged 100% when he first met me. He said that's his pledge. He pledged 100% of his proceeds and shares to go back to nonprofits. And he
Amazing.
created a foundation for there. So I got really
Amazing.
charmed by that person. I was coming out of, I was the CEO of a consulting company helping researchers like him get into the markets and company launching products. It was a marriage of, if you want, minds and souls. And I said, I'll help you build El Nutra, which is the company that he had founded to commercialize the fasting mimicking diet and help you get the fasting mimicking diet to the market. And that was 6 years ago. So I'm kind of, if you want, he's the thought leader in longevity, aging, and disease prevention. He does his work at USC, and now we have 16 partnered university doing global
Oh,
research with
wow.
us.
Wow.
We just reached 39 clinical trials on the fasting mimicking diet. I
Wow.
think that's a record. That's a record in nutrition for one formulation to have so many clinical trials happening, and they're
Amazing.
all IRB reviewed and top kind of top caliber, top universities leading the research. So I came in to kind of realize his dream and bring this technology to doctors and people and helping them in a safe way reset their body. And in some cases, we know for aging, it's age prevention and age-related conditions prevention. But now we're testing in 39 clinical trials. What would the fasting mimicking diet to do with cancer? What the fasting mimicking diet do with cardiovascular disease, with diabetes, with Alzheimer's, with multiple sclerosis, and other autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, and you
So
and I,
that's
you and I talked a little bit about the new article that came out. It's not necessarily a new study, but the new article that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting about it is that they really were clear about what conditions. There was like 8 different conditions that they recommended intermittent fasting for. So I love that you guys are going condition by condition, because I think that's pretty remarkable.
I think you have to, because if you look at nutrition, there's no question that one of the biggest determinants, at least top 2 or 3 determinants of our longevity is nutrition. The problem is the nutrition businesses, they went after selling us things that taste
Yes.
good or that,
Yeah.
that increase their margins, etc. And they didn't invest enough into the science behind what they're selling us. So
Yeah.
the biggest issue in nutrition, why nutrition is not part of every doctor's clinic, why nutrition is not part of every medical curriculum, because it never had the right investment in research and science to prove what parts of nutrition do on the body. And so you feel, I went to one of the best med schools. You and many other doctors worked with us did the same, and we all suffered from the same thing. We're trained about going from a symptom to a differential diagnosis and then to a pill or a surgery.
Right.
And we never had courses and training and articles published in top journals about nutrition. So the thing I like a lot about Walter is he decided to bring credibility to
I
nutrition.
love
And
it.
by treating food as medicine, the concept of food as medicine is reality now with the fasting mimicking diet. It ticks everything that you see behind medicine, meaning it's National Institute of Health sponsored most of the research, and we thank them big time. They've put tens of millions of dollars behind his research because they trust in it and because they see the public impact of it. Then the research is done at universities, it's not done in private companies. Then it was a new discovery. He made it safe and with very high efficacy. And this is why the fasting market is blossoming. And obviously other thought leaders have come up with finding, a value for intermittent fasting, not just prolonged fasting. And intermittent fasting, we'll talk about it, has a lot of value. So that came all together where for the first time you see food as medicine and food studied as medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've been in the market with Prolon for only 3 years, and we have over 10,000 clinics or healthcare practitioners registered with us to deliver Prolon or
That's
to
awesome.
recommend
Yeah. Yeah. And I love,
Prolon. So happy to start shifting healthcare.
yeah, it's so smart, because I love this idea of the trunk of the tree being the issue, and that we're off, healthcare has been off treating the branches that are the disease. I think that's a phenomenal idea. And people are begging for it. I mean, I always say I'm down in the trenches with the people, and people are like, I don't want a pill anymore. I want more control than that. And this is where things like the fast mimicking diet really can come in and help. So I love what you're doing with that. Talk a little bit about Prolon itself and like what's in that food. And then, to give everybody else a little bit of a background, you and I had a conversation about the quality of the food and is it organic? Is it not? And I think what you had to say was really important.
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody hears it.
Yeah. So the formulation behind Prolon, are we back?
Yeah. I lost you for a moment. Yep.
So, so the formulation behind Prolon was studied years ago. In part of our pledge to our, I don't even want to call them customers, they're really like people we pledge the best science and the best products to study everything we bring to them. So 5 years ago, we looked at the formulation and the main goal was to mimic fasting. And so it was really studying what feed, both from a macro and a micronutrients to the body and to nourish the body, and not to mimic fasting by starvation. That's very important. It's mimicking fasting nourishment. So Prolon is not a 200 calorie or 100 calorie or a bite here. Prolon is between 800 and 1,100 calorie. And this is very important for safety and efficacy. How much can we nourish the body while keep fasting mode? And obviously when you do that research with that focus, you spend a lot of time and money in trials to figure out ingredient by ingredient. Now, when you evolve from there to now, our mindset has been focused in the last, okay, how can we now even tailor more the ingredients to have less, nightshades, to have less of the things that in the last 3-4 years we started focusing on, such as no gluten, which we were able to achieve, and no X and no Y. So now we're more also about the ingredients to make sure that we're giving you the best ingredients there. But we don't do it and we change the products release. Always do it. We retest. We make sure that we have the same validity, the same scientific conversion, and then we go with it. So we're very sensitive to ingredients. We're very sensitive to science, to test and to prove, but also the environment, also following the every ingredients and how can we give you now the best product from an ingredients standpoint and also from a fasting mimicking standpoint. And this is where we're very close to. So we're working very intensively now. Now we're soy-free, gluten-free. We're going to soon have, a lot of the ingredients also that, for some practitioners and some people also they react to, and even working on the packaging. So the packaging is as much environmentally friendly as possible. So the box now is recyclable and we're working intensively. But we have, this is part of your discussion with me. Prolon is over 66 ingredients and we have 18 suppliers from around the world to supply that product. So we have to grow to start enforcing on them their own changes and their own adaptation and all of that, we're very excited to announce that it's all happening. Yeah. And we have improved tremendously. But at the same time, when we test, and why it's complicated, because and some people think the list, you say, okay, I can eat 9-10% proteins. Are we back?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Are we back?
Yeah. Keep going. You cut in and out a little bit, but it's all good. You got it? Yeah. You were talking about the proteins.
So trying to say that, I'm trying to say that it's not just a percentage of protein and a percentage of carbs and a percentage of fat, and you put it together and you go with it. It's a very complicated, it's a 4-dimensional actually complication to do the fasting diet. You have every ingredient proportionally, and then at the calorie level, but also we look at in the proteins, we look at the amino acid sequence. And when I release a lot of secrets, but a different amino acid sequence leads to different response on the nutrition sensing pathway. We look at the carbs, which level of carbs, how long the chains, what part of the day, what goes with them, so that you don't induce a fast absorption and spikes in insulin and sugar. So people always asked us, how come you have this much sugar in mimicking fasting? And that's the goal, is how much I can at home, when you're doing Prolon at home with no supervision, or going to work, or going on a trip, I need to be safe enough for you to do it. And I need to feed you enough so that you're fasting with whatever activity you're doing during the day. So we go all the way to the max, but we have all our discoveries and tricks and proprietary innovation in it, so that it's done to nourish you while keeping the cells at a fasting level.
Yeah, I tried it
So
for
it's a very complicated.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I tried it for the first time over a year ago, and I had been doing a lot of fasting, and my first reaction was like, oh my gosh, this is so much food. And then I saw like the bars, they're so
Yes.
yummy. I mean, everything is so yummy. And the
Yes.
bar was like, I felt like I was cheating. I'm like, really? But then,
Yes.
I watched my blood sugar and my ketones throughout the whole
Yes.
experience. And it was like, I was
Yes.
getting into ketosis really
Yes.
easily eating all this food. It seemed like a lot
Yes.
to me.
Yes.
So
Yes, and that's the beauty, and this is important to get through to. It's very important to get through this message, is because some people think that, hey, I'll eat 2 almonds, I'll eat 1 lettuce, and I'll be fasting, right? It's like, but that's fasting by starvation. You didn't get your minerals,
right.
You didn't get your proteins, you didn't feed your brain, you didn't feed your heart that has to pump all the time, you didn't feed your muscle. Fasting mimicking diet got, we have 24 filed patents on it now, and it has is the only nutrition ever to have a patent on promoting longevity and health span, which we received last year. In all the study was how to make it safe, how to nourish you while mimicking fasting. And it's very important, in medicine, we always swear to, the Hippocrates, sermon, which is first, do no harm, and primum nil nocere, we say. So first you have to really talk about patient safety, consumer safety, and efficacy. And I think we've done an amazing job hitting both at a really high level. We're very excited about what's to come as well.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
the trials that we're doing.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about, and this is a
So,
great segue into intermittent fasting. So when you do Prolon, I'll tell you how I like to do it. I kind of like to keep my eating window really small, and then it feels like I'm eating a lot. But I don't know if that's how the studies were done. And this leads into intermittent fasting in the new article that just came out. So are we supposed to do intermittent fasting with Prolon, or are we supposed to eat all day? Oh, I lost you.
Yeah, no, you're supposed to do. Are we back?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So with Prolon, you really have to do the way it is in the leaflet. So, the word intermittent fasting, and this is very important, when you and most people say, I'm doing intermittent fasting, you're assuming you're doing 16 hours or time restricted eating, basically. You're eating during a window of 8 hours, but that's only one type of intermittent. The one that we follow with Prolon, and the one that we recommend for everyone who are healthy, who don't need to lose weight, right, who don't have a condition, is really to do it 12 hours. We're for 12, max 13 hours of no food, and okay if you want to go to 14. And this is because it follows your body's balance, right? There's a circadian rhythm built in. There's if you track, and I don't know if you or your followers have talked before about the longevity diet book of Professor Longo, but he talks about all this, and we'd be more than happy to provide you guys with copies. But if you look at the centenarians who live 100 and beyond, they typically respect the overnight fast, and that's the 12 hours. They don't skip breakfast, and actually that's common to most centenarians, not skipping breakfast specifically. So, and if you go and you look at the body's hormonal and secretions, they change in the night. You have different, you have melatonin, you have more cortisol in the morning, etc. So there's a body biological clock. If you do the 12-12, you're respecting that. And this is the problem we're facing today, is that we snack late before sleeping, and we have easy access to refrigeration. Sometimes we're in a party, we eat at 11, we eat at midnight. So the problem is really, we're not respecting even the 12 hours. The problem is not that we need to extend to 14 and 16. 16, and we'll talk about that. Main problem we're suffering from in the US is due to stresses, due to lack of sleep, due to the lifestyle we have and need access to food. We're snacking frequently and we're eating later at night. So the intermittent fasting that we recommend for, again, healthy people, healthy, fit people, is to respect the 12 hours, which rematch you with natural evolution. It rematches your body with circadian rhythm.
Interesting.
And it allows you to eat in the morning. So if you think about it, when you wake up in the morning is when your brain becomes active. So it needs calories. It's when your body becomes active, you're walking, you're going to work, etc. So you need to feed the vital organs of your body. Your heart is pumping faster when you move. Your brain is thinking. This is why you lose weight when you breakfast, because there's a need for calories. So it's always a challenge. Do you want to starve the vital organs in the morning and feel a bit weaker in the early afternoon? And some people start feeling the headache at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. if they don't eat. So the brain is saying, hey, I'm suffering. So what we say is eating in the morning is important if you're, again, fit, to maintain healthy balance. But if you, and this is when I'm going to go beyond the 12 hours to 14 and 16, and in rare cases we don't recommend the 18. It's a big stress, but to the body. But if you want to go 14 to 16, you would do it if you have a reason. It's interventional now. It's not a biobalance. It's not, if you're taking an extra step, you're stressing your body further to lose further weight. And you do it if you're pre-diabetic, you have a certain condition that and there's these now on breast cancer, and extending the overnight fast. So if there's a need to starve a cancer a little bit every day, if there's a need to lose weight fast because you have a metabolic condition, these are the conditions where you want to intervene with a longer fast. And this is why the theories of intermittent fasting, which goes to 16 hours or a little bit longer, it comes from doctors or practitioners or scientists, and they're looking at conditions, right? It doesn't come from the longevity study. The longevity studies with Walter and others are looking more of a 12 hours to 14 hours max. And you can see how the confusion is that everyone is trying to apply either or on everything. And the right way of looking at it is, if you're fit, otherwise you don't need to lose a lot of weight. You don't have a high risk for a condition. You don't have an intervention to do. You can hours keeps your body in balance. It doesn't stress your brain in the morning from lack of food. It doesn't stress your vital organs, etc., etc. And people think that if you don't eat breakfast, then there's ketones and the body breaks down the fat and feeds the brain and you're all set. This doesn't happen in the morning. It takes several hours after. Yeah. You don't get into this after 20 hours, some people 24, some people 30 hours. So you're literally stressing your body. The body is calling for calories, doesn't find it. Then the liver tries to help, some glycogen in the muscle tries to help, and then fat starts to help. So what we're saying is this cost of prolonging by 4 hours the fast is only justifies when there's a bigger need, a metabolic intervention to do. And this is very important because there's this huge confusion today. Everyone is trying to apply 16 hours to everything, or 12 hours to everything, or 18 hours. You hear people going for 20 hours. So, which is really a big stress there.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
What we're trying to say is that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
what I'm trying to say is fasting is not all positive, and it's not a race to who does longer. That's definitely these ideas we took with them. It's not like I'm doing now 17, let me try 18 or 19. You have to understand that you're losing the weight because your body is calling for calories that you're not feeding. And you're creating stress to these organs before your body cope with. This is why we go with several days with the fasting mimicking diets. We're saying, okay, if you really want to change your several days, and don't do it just on water. If you can, and you're under supervision, all of that, do it. But if you can do it with food, and you want to induce a longer change, you do that. On the shorter term, 12 hours if you're fit, 16 hours if there's a need. Going beyond that, there's no science showing that 18 or 20 is really worth it on certain conditions. Now, in the future, I really hope we do intermittent fasting with cancer, because I believe starving cancer is the go. We have done it successfully in mice by starving for several days. We just finished our human trials. They're not published, so I cannot reveal the results, but we're super excited about those. They're in reviews and going to get published. So I think intermittent fasting also play a role, several conditions. But again, it doesn't come at no cost because you're not eating anything. It comes at a cost, and we have to balance, the cost and the benefits.
So what do you think about, we see this with the resetters a lot, the lifestyle where people are intermittent fasting 16 hours every day, 16, 17 hours. And then when they, we're coming post-holiday time, when they want to really kind of reset their health, they'll go into some longer fasts. Do you feel like that would be safe? I call it splashy. Like you go in and you splash a longer fast in, and then you come out and you go back to what your lifestyle would be.
Again, fasting comes at a cost. So I don't want to generalize. So my answer would be, if you're fit, if you're healthy, you just gain a couple of pounds after or 3 pounds. You're not pre-diabetic. You're not increasing your risk dramatically. You can rebalance your body with the 12 hours, with 14 hours, so going at 17 and 18, you should understand that body is homeostatic. The body is a multi-system, what we call homeostasis, meaning like stability. It's a balance, right? And if every day you're gonna starve your brain, your heart, your kidneys, and your liver, and then you feed them at the end of the day, and then the next day you starve them, and then you feed them and you starve, we call it the yo-yo effect. Mm-hmm. This doesn't fit a homeostatic, doesn't fit a balanced lifestyle, So and I know this is not going to please a lot of people, but that's the truth, and we have a lot of science to back up what we're saying. And also it fits the logic of human evolution and how the body operates. If you stress and then you refeed, I mean, imagine the brain switched to ketones with fasting, and it doesn't do it right away. It takes time. So you're stressing the brain. The brain says, okay, I'm going to switch to ketone. The moment the brain is switching to ketone consumption instead of sugar consumption, then the body again sugar, and the brain has to switch back to sugar, and the next day it gets stressed and it starts to switch to ketones, and then it sees sugars again and it goes back to sugar again. So now if you tell me that potentially you have a medical condition that still, the science of fasting is not all the way there, but there's a nice article, for example, on breast cancer and overnight fasting of 15 hours. And so you're telling me, okay, every day I know I'm creating some stress to the body, but hey, I have cancer, I'm and I have cancer, let me underfeed my cancer. And how about I do 17 instead of 15? This makes sense to me. There's no randomized clinical control on 15 versus 17 versus 18. But I, as a physician, and with my knowledge of fasting, I would say, you know what? I want to starve cancer. I don't want to feed cancer. So sorry for the brain and the heart and the muscles that have to a little bit get weakened during the day, but I have a much decision to starve my cancer and try to. So I don't want to generalize. To answer your question, I don't want to say, hey, because you feasted on a little bit of food. I mean, if a person is diabetic or has a condition and is now destabilizing, this is a person that should go back to a healthy lifestyle. And if a person is otherwise fit, doesn't need to stress their body to 17 hours plus of fasting. I don't see the benefit, honestly, to be honest with you. You're stressing and you're after that. So I'm not sure what could be the extra benefits versus the cost of doing that.
And so what if
but we need more science.
Yeah.
Science, how.
Yeah. What do you think of, so if you're healthy and you want to use Prolon, is that something that you would use once a quarter, once a year, once a month? Like, is there any kind of routine around why you would use it if you're healthy?
Yeah. So if you're healthy, you're fit, you're at a mid-age, and you exercise, don't have much stress, etc., you can do Prolon 2, 3, or 4 times a year. I personally do it once every quarter, depending on my schedule, etc. And it's not just for health and weight and balance, but for resetting and inducing cellular rejuvenation. So the discussion of Prolon and intermittent fasting are a little bit separate. Intermittent fasting does great things to your body from a metabolic and weight-related and metabolic standpoint. Prolon does that and much faster because you're doing several days of fasting, continuous. You're doing it in a safe way with food, but it's a continuous fast. But also it adds the stress where the cells now are taking action and trying to rejuvenate and doing autophagy, which is a self-eat, because the lack of calories, and they try to optimize their function. So I do it from that biological endpoint. It's very important. Nutrition, whether it's intermittent fasting, low calorie, etc., the play is on calorie count and the play is on timing of the day of food, or you have metabolic benefits from calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. With Prolon, you have that layer of cellular biological aging, which is unrelated. We're going to publish an article soon showing that it's unrelated to weight. It's one of the rare times where that if you fix the weight effect, you still have extra benefits on biological aging. For this is why I personally do it, and it helps me a lot with my weight and my energy. And now, if you have a medical, if you have a metabolic reason you want to maintain healthy level of CRP, if you want to maintain a healthy level of blood pressure, of triglyceride, etc., then you could do Prolon in the trials. You can do it 3 times in a row, meaning per month for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So you do 3 Prolons within 90 days. This is because you want to be more interventional. You want to maintain a healthy level of something. You have a goal, health goal to achieve. And then after that, if you achieve your health goal, you can do it once every quarter to maintain. So these kind of are the 2, if you want, regimens for Prolon. You remember number 3 times a year if you're healthy, or 3 times in a row, then once every quarter is kind of is the way we're recommended.
And you guys are coming out with new Prolons, right? Like you're coming out with one for cancer, and I thought I had heard you say that at a conference I heard you speak at.
Yeah, we call them fasting mimicking diets, and they're different for cancer. Then I'll say a few words about it in here. So we tested in mice the concept of fasting their bodies for several days with the fasting mimicking diet before chemotherapy. And now we're testing with tyrosine kinase therapy, immunotherapy, and hormone therapy. So all the 4 major therapies for cancer. And the goal is you want to starve cancer before it gets hit by them. It's not feeding cancer. Typically today when you go to clinics and you have cancer, actually they advise us to eat before chemo because you're going to lose weight after, you're going to have side effects. And when you eat, once you have cancer is one of the fastest growing organ. By definition, it's a cell that keeps replicating with no inhibition. So it's like the fastest runner in the crew, and you're just feeding the fastest runner to run faster. Mm-hmm. And what we discovered is that if you starve that runner, the runner gets weakened faster because it has to run, so it has to replicate. Cancer has to keeps going, keeps replicating, and when you starve it, you really sensitize it for chemo. There are 2 other benefits covered in mice, and now we're finishing the trials in humans. One is we saw that when you do the fasting, the prolonged fast, part of talking about resetting the cells and the rejuvenation, we see an activation of immunity against cancer. And a third benefit is, by fasting, the normal cells of the body, they go off replication because there's no calories for them to replicate. So you spare them the side effects. Chemo comes and kills cells in replication. Cancer doesn't know how to stop. You starve it, it gets hit more severely by chemotherapy. The normal cells are hibernating, no calories. They're in fasting mode. They're hibernating, spared the side effects of chemotherapy. So that was the concept behind doing fasting mimicking diet, initially in mice and now in humans. And that's a separate product. It's the fasting period of it is 4 days. It's not 5, but it's more severe than Prolon. It starves the cancer. So it's kind of a more acute, strong intervention to really starve the cancer and to really weaken it against chemotherapy.
Yeah, that's a great.
We have another diet that we're testing for autoimmune.
Easy for people to understand too, and as for practitioners, for us to be like, here, it's nice when it's a turnkey system like that.
It is important because if you try to do, if you overeat, you're not gonna be in a fasting mode, which is the last thing you want to do. And if you undereat, you're starving the body now and the cancer. So when we test, it takes us tens of years, and we just crossed $50 million into research and development. And this is important. In nutrition, you don't hear these investments in research. And we have 20 patents that are, I think, now over 12 or 13 papers on fasting mimicking diet. And this year we're hoping to publish an extra 5 or 6. So we put a lot of research to really figure out what is that where I don't want to starve you, I want to feed you because you need that, but keep your cells or the targeted organ actually, I want to increase efficacy there. So how to balance safety and efficacy, which is really critical when, especially in longevity, is very important, but in disease setting, it's very critical to protect the doctor, to protect the patients, and to be always be safe and efficacious.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, you guys are doing amazing work, and I was thinking as you were talking, once a month we take a different theme in the resetters, and we practice different types of fasts. We already kind of have our plan for January, and I'm thinking for February I'm going to encourage resetters to all try Prolon. We'll do a week of 5. We always do 5 days of Prolon or of any kind of fast. So it's fun because you've got all these expert fasters in the group, and so, or people who are new to fasting that are trying new principles. And one of my big tenets is there's an individual path for everybody. There's that some people do great on water fast, some people need more structure like Prolon. So I think what we'll do in February is really profile your Prolon and the fast mimicking diet. So this is great. So awesome.
We'd be happy to support. And I think one of the books that changed my life, which we're providing for free, is the Longevity Diet book. Awesome. And if you want, and it tells the entire story about Volter, about fasting, longevity, etc. And if you want to provide your followers with the book, we'd be more than happy for free actually to give you as many copies as you want. And that kind of introduced them to what's the balanced way to fast and how to fast and why this and how to eat on a daily basis. By the way, it's not only about fasting, mimicking. I don't know if I spoke with you about nutrition for longevity, but maybe we can say a couple of words here. We're not only about fasting. We're called, the company that Volter set up, which now owns Prolon, is called L-Nutra, L for longevity and Nutra for nutrition. And for us, it's not just fasting and fasting mimicking, but it's how to eat healthy every day. And a lot of people come to us, say, you're the company we trust, you do the right science, you're ethical, you donate back. Just for people to know, Volter still owns 58%, I think, of the company, and all of it is donated back to the Create Cures Foundation. So help us outside of fasting, even if you're doing time-restricted eating, what should I eat in these 8-12 hours? What should I eat every day? And most centenarians, they follow a pescatarian diet, so plant-based and some fish. And obviously, in some countries, there's some meat, so flexitarian. But then how to source the food? Like we go every day. The biggest challenge I have personally is I go to shop, and I don't know which I don't want to name brands, but wherever you go, there's no guarantee that there's no pesticides used, that this is not GMO'd. I don't know if you saw the study published that 37%, I think that was the number, and of the restaurants they claim gluten-free actually have gluten in the. So the numbers are shocking. Yep. And we decided to be the first company in the world, and again, we're trying to build that trust to go and own the entire supply chain of the food. So we went around the world, we sourced grains that are ancient, very old, non-genetically modified, and a lot of them coming from the blue zones of the longevity pockets around the world. We brought them to the US. We took a big land on the west side of New Jersey, and we own the entire, we seed them all the way to harvesting them, no pesticides, no herbicides, no artificial fertilization. We even have our own fish in the field. So we feed them our plants and we take that excretion back to the soil so that we don't have any artificial fertilization coming from outside. We even have our own bees, so we don't have cross-pollination. So it's a land that's now growing ancient foods, like 1,000-year-old net present value, bring it up to today. And we package them into a pescatarian and a vegetarian diet that actually fits the centenarian food. And we ship them second-day delivery. We're the fastest company now delivering fresh food. So we call it nutrition for longevity, and it's part of L-Nutra. Okay. And a lot of people doing Prolon, they say, what should I do in between? Or even now, intermittent fasting, we're going to release soon an intermittent fasting nutrition for longevity kind of diet, where if you want to restrict your food for 12 hours or 8 or 10, but still you want to eat healthy. It's not only about the timing, but it's about what am I eating? And because we own that entire supply chain system, from bringing the grain, seeding it, harvesting it, packaging it, and shipping, we can guarantee that there's no pesticide sprayed, there's no herbicides used in the ground,
Amazing.
it's regenerative, etc.
Amazing. So
And
people can order that now. That's food available
we
now.
launched that just October of this year, so it's been two months in the market. It's doing amazingly well. The reception is unbelievable, and a lot of doctors are now looking at it for elimination diet. We're started talking with the American Diabetes Association to fit their recommendation for that. We're gonna go for, and we're starting with longevity and eating healthy. We're gonna start putting some science behind it to test what does it do for diabetes, what does it do for cancer, for autoimmune diseases, etc., and try to become that first nutrition of trust that you can buy that is tailored to your condition or that fits your condition.
Yeah.
This is still in research, but now we have the longevity package, and this is what we call the company nutrition for longevity. You can visit the site and see the story, and the CEO of that company is a fantastic lady, Alaskan native, and then was super as a person, made it all the way to becoming a leader in Bayer, which is the only company where that has agriculture and pharma and consumer goods. So she's really a master of that supply chain, but a heart of regenerative medicine, of nature, of purity, of science, and that was the main ingredient for the success of that project.
Amazing. Well, you guys are up to some incredible things, and I do agree. If we're going to use food as medicine, we got to clean the chemicals out. We got to look at things like where the macro count is and how much you're going to fast. Like food can be medicine when the food is as good as what you guys are trying to create. So thank you so much. And what we will do is we'll put links to all of this in my notes and on our Resetter group. And next month, we will do fast mimicking diet in our fast training week. Yep. And we'll put a link out for Prolon. Thank you for your generosity of the books. We'll reach out. That's awesome. And just grateful for what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much. I'll follow up with you. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Antoun. And
Same
if you guys
here.
have questions, if you guys have questions, just leave them in the comments.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being I want to thank you on behalf of your followers, because you're being a catalyst of change. You're bringing them the cutting edge science.
Thank you. We're trying.
And the right way of being that.
Yeah,
this is doctors like you and more visionaries.
Thank you. Yeah, we just want people to believe in themselves again. We really want them to understand that they can heal. So, thank you. So grateful for you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Happy New Year.
You too.
Thanks.